Hello, and welcome to 12-Minute Meditation, a weekly podcast from mindful.org that offers mindfulness meditations backed by neuroscience. If you've been practicing, you know that 12 minutes of meditation a day can yield benefits like increased attention, focus, creativity, calm, resilience, and compassion. The latest scientific research supports this knowledge. So, on this podcast, we invite you to do your 12-minute practice with guided meditations from today's leading mindfulness experts. There's a new practice each week and a new way to experience some of those benefits day to day. I'm Chelsea Arsenal, Director of Advertising at Mindful and Mindful.org. And this week we join Nate Klemp as he leads us in the meditation called Cultivating the Big Mind. In our world, brimming with constant information and rapid change, it's common to feel overwhelmed and resort to narrowing our focus, which can actually end up increasing stress and anxiety. This practice proposes a different approach by widening our perspective. It shifts our view from a limited soda straw outlook to an expansive panoramic one. Consider the stresses of daily life as a dark cloud in a vast sky. Typically, we zoom in on this cloud, letting it dominate our view. But what if we zoom out, noticing the broad, tranquil blue sky that surrounds it? This conceptual change is central to today's meditation, where Nate will guide us to widen our perspective through sight and hearing, encouraging a broader, more empowered approach to life's challenges. Excitingly, Nate is also offering 20 free copies of his new book, Open, Living with an Expansive Mind in a Distracted World, to our listeners. This is a fantastic opportunity to dive deeper into mindfulness and expansion. To win a copy of Nate's new book, visit the show notes of this episode and enter by March 15th. Nate Klemp, co-author of the 80-80 Marriage, a new model for happier, stronger relationship, is a former philosophy professor and a founding partner at Mindful. He co-authored Start Here, a New York Times best-selling guide to practical mindfulness. You can subscribe to 12-Minute Meditation while you're on mindful.org or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And if you're moved to leave a review, we'd be grateful. And so will other listeners. See, your review helps them to decide whether 12-minute meditation is for them. But for now, for you, here's Nate Klemp.
Hi, my name is Nate Klemp. I'm a founding partner at Mindful and also the co-author of Start Here and the 80-80 Marriage. Today, I want to explore a practice that's really all about the size of the mind. And I know that may sound totally crazy, but here's what I mean. When we feel stressed, when we feel anxious, when we feel irritated or angry, one of the things that happens to the mind is that it shrinks down. It's like it tunnels in on whatever's happening, the stressful moment, the emotion we don't want to feel. There's a researcher, Andrew Huberman at Stanford, who calls this the soda straw view of the mind. This is the view of stress, right? Everything becomes small, possibilities fade away. All we can see is this one thing that we want to get rid of or that we want to change or that we wish wasn't happening in our lives or even in the world. So it turns out that one of the most powerful mindfulness practices we can do is simply intentionally and consciously expand the size of the mind, expand the size of our awareness. And it turns out there's actually interesting research showing that when we shift from that death stare on our phones, that really focused, intense, gripped stare, to something more like a relaxed gaze, panoramic awareness, that we're actually shifting the nervous system itself. It's almost like taking a few deep breaths. So you can think of this shift that we're going to be playing with in the practice from small, contracted, tight mind to relaxed, wide open, big mind as a way both that we can begin to create this habit in our lives, but also as a way that we can intentionally create an experience of relaxation in our lives, especially during those tense moments. And one last thing I would just say before we jump into the practice, there's a metaphor here that can be really useful. If you think about stress or moments of discomfort or irritation or anxiety, it's kind of like we're looking up into the sky at a dark thundercloud, and all we can see is the dark cloud. What we're going to do in this practice and this whole idea of expanding the size or the scope of the mind is the equivalent of essentially zooming out on that one small cloud and beginning to see that surrounding that one small dark cloud in the sky are miles and miles and miles of clear, blue, beautiful sky. So that's essentially the move that we're going to make in this practice. And at the end, we'll talk about how you can integrate this into the everyday moment-to-moment flow of your life. So find a comfortable seat. And for this practice, unlike many other forms of mindfulness practice, I actually find that it's very helpful to keep your eyes open. In addition to that, it can be very helpful to align yourself somewhere where you have a view of something. It could just be a view of your house, a view of your room. Maybe you have a window and you can just look out the window. So we're kind of giving ourselves this visual field that's going to become part of the practice. So once you have yourself positioned and aligned, eyes wide open, some sort of view or vista. By the way, this practice is unbelievable when done on the top of a mountain or sitting at the beach or at a park or at sunset. But for now, we'll take whatever we've got. So as always, I like to start by just feeling the sensations in the body, feeling a sense of relaxation trickle down from your head, through your neck, into your torso, your hips, your legs, all the way down into your feet. Relaxation, it turns out, is the key to this practice. You might also notice the breath. Notice the sensations happening with each inhale and exhale. But now let's turn our attention to the first element of this bigger view, the big mind. And that is the visual field. So just for fun, let's start by picking an object in your visual field. One small, tiny object. Maybe it's a tree outside. Maybe it's a chair in your room. Doesn't matter what it is. But we're going to start with the opposite of this view that we're trying to cultivate. Just focus in on this one small thing as intently as you possibly can. Really try to focus on this one thing, bringing all of your visual perception to this one small dot of awareness. Let's do it for about 10 more seconds. And now drop all effort. Let your eyes relax. Notice that you almost automatically, after a moment of focus like that, the mind just sort of relaxes into this wider view, bigger view. Notice what it's like now to see the panoramic view of whatever's in front of you, where you're not trying, you're not efforting, you're just allowing yourself to take in this view, to gaze at what's in front of you. In a relaxed way, you can even imagine the edges of your visual field slowly expanding. It's like you're now the wide angle camera on your phone. And we do this from a spirit of allowing and receptivity. You're just allowing yourself to be in this state where you're gazing at the world in panoramic awareness, the big view. And now let's add one more piece to this. So staying with this gaze, begin to notice sound. So we're now going to add auditory perception as well. And just notice sounds that are close by. Again, from this open, receptive, relaxed state. You might even notice, if you can, the sound of each breath. And now allow the scope of your hearing to expand, noticing sounds in the room. Maybe there's the sound of ventilation. And now in a relaxed and gentle way, allowing yourself to notice sounds even further off into the distance. Maybe the sound of the breeze outside, sound of birds. Just relaxing into this wide, big view. Eyes relaxed and open, ears relaxed and open. And now we might add one more sense. As you hold this wide open gaze and you hear the sounds, you might also notice that sensation is happening in the body. That's also part of this view. So now see what happens when you just allow this sensation of the body to be part of this view. Noticing that your awareness, the scope of your mind, keeps getting bigger, broader, wider, vast. Noticing the visual field, noticing sounds, noticing sensations, no attempt to change, relaxing into things as they are. Seeing this moment with this totally fresh, wide open view. And now chances are, if you're new to a practice like this, it takes a little bit of effort, concentration, to stay with this kind of a wide open perspective. So the invitation for the next minute or two is to drop that effort. Don't try. But see if you can still stay connected in some way to this wide open view. If you feel even the slightest part of yourself wanting to push your eyes open or your ears open or expand the size of your mind, let that go. No effort. But staying in this relaxed, receptive view. Now see if you can just stay in this effortless, open view for the next 30 seconds or so. And now, before we come back, I want to give you a few moments just to explore and investigate this bigger perspective. So staying where you are, keeping your mind in this wider place if you can, just noticing any differences between the way you ordinarily see life or the world and the way you're seeing it now. Comparing and contrasting the big mind, which we've been trying to cultivate, to the small mind, which for most of us is our home base. Okay, so now you can bring yourself here. We never really left. For me, when I enter that state of mind or that mindfulness practice around opening awareness, the scope of the mind, it often feels like my mind becomes almost like a security camera. That I'm just watching the feed of this camera, listening to the feed of the microphones, just kind of watching whatever's happening. It tends to be really boring and not very interesting, but it starts to become incredibly interesting the more my perspective widens. So hopefully that was interesting to you. And one of the things I'd like to do before you go is to give you a practice that you can take with you for the rest of the day, a way of integrating this shift from the small mind to the big mind into your everyday life. And the way to do this is really quite simple. It's to imagine several times throughout the rest of the day that you're seeing whatever it is that you're seeing from the perspective of a mountaintop, or maybe it's the perspective of a beach. Pick your favorite natural metaphor. But the basic idea is that if you catch yourself feeling stressed out, or if you notice that you've spent the last 45 minutes scrolling Instagram on your phone with a tight, gripped stare, just take 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds to see whatever's happening from the mountaintop. In fact, it can be quite interesting to bring this big perspective into something like email or the document you're working on or surfing the news or whatever it is. It's actually so radically different that it can change your entire perspective of some of these things that make up a big part of our day. So that's the homework for the rest of the day. 3 moments where you are seeing whatever's happening in life from the mountaintop, and then see what happens.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 12-Minute Meditation from Mindful and mindful.org. I hope you enjoyed practicing with us. We'll be back in 7 days with another meditation for you.